What's good, everybody? It's your boy Curt from Triad Hip Hop Podcast, and happy Black History Month. I wanted to do this little segment, that we call Lost in Thought, because this is something that, I just wanted to share. Every time Black History Month comes around, I really just like to remind myself of the importance of Black history and, the whole subject of the people that, left a legacy, that was carved into this country and into this whole world that came before me. And I just want to also talk about the origins of Black History Month. So I'm going to read some stuff to you that, I've done some studying on, but, I just made some notes so I wouldn't forget anything. So Black History Month basically started out as a week. You know what I mean? Back in the early 1900s, a man named Carter G. Woodson, who is a Black historian, started it around 1926. Now, basically, he started it because he wanted to make sure that we had remembrance of the importance of the legacy that was left by, Black Americans and, people of African descent who had blazed the trail and contributed to the growth of this country and, did things off of the skin of their backs, just to make sure that this country, had growth. So he wanted to make sure that that was something that was celebrated and honored and remembered. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Carter G. Woodson, just so we can understand who he was. He was an American historian, an author, a journalist, and a founder of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. So he was also one of the first scholars to study African American history. He founded the Journal of Negro History which was in 1916. Also, Woodson has been called the father of Black history. In February 1926, he launched the celebration of Negro History Week. So this is how it started off, as Negro History Week. And they had been celebrating before that, pretty much every February. And so they just wanted to make it more official. So in 1926, that's when they launched the celebration of Negro History Week, which is the precursor to Black History Month. So Carter G. Woodson, a little bit more about him. He made it to Berea College, where he became a teacher and a school administrator. He gained a graduate degree at the University of Chicago. And in 1912, he was only the second African American after W.E.B. Du Bois to obtain a PhD degree from Harvard University. Only the second. So most of Woodson's academic career was spent at Howard University, which is a historically Black university in Washington, D.C. Shout out to Howard. I've been there several times. Me and the wife went there too. He served at Howard as the dean of College of Arts and Sciences. So, I just wanted to give you a little history about him and his contribution to history and education. He was very heavy into education. So please go out and study Carter G. Woodson. He's one of those people that isn't talked about very much in school history books. Now, back to Black History Month, they originally, when it was Negro History Week, they celebrated every February in the second week of February. It's always in the second week. And mainly it was because of the birthdays of President Abraham Lincoln, who wrote that Emancipation Proclamation that helped free the slaves, and then Frederick Douglass, who's also a major contributor to Black history. Please go study him as well. I'm sure you know a little something about him, but please go do a thorough study of him as well and his life. I actually have a book about his life, and it's an excellent read. I read it all the time. It's actually in my book bag. I actually have it. I take it to work with me, so anytime I get bored and I just want something to read, that's one of the books I always have on hand. So here's what Carter G. Woodson wrote about the importance of writing and keeping the legacy for a race of people, because basically, he felt the need for this Negro History Week. Now, I will say this. It's said that eventually he wanted this whole thing, Negro History Week, to be done and over with at some point, because he hoped that eventually Black history would be included more so in American history. But even to this day, in 2020, it has not completely been inclusive, or included, I should say. My apologies. Because basically, they give you this small, 5 to 10 people about Black history when you go to grade school and high school and all of that. They give you a few people, your Martin Luther Kings, your Rosa Parks, they give you a little bit on Frederick Douglass and stuff like that, Harriet Tubman, but they don't really give you very thorough information. So we, as people of color, our history should be in that history. It shouldn't just be overflooded with all these white people and people of non-color who have basically done their contributions. And then on the subject of that, I will say this. A lot of white inventors stole their inventions from Black people. You know what I mean? Because what they would do is they would find out somebody of color invented something, and a lot of times they would go and run and get patents on our invention so that they could get the credit for it. You know what I mean? And so, of course, I'm not saying ours as in me, I didn't invent anything. But I'm just saying people of color in general, that would happen a lot. It is said that, Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin was actually made by his Black assistant, and that he stole that idea. I'm not sure about that, but that's something that's being said, and I've read about it a couple of places. So either way, but Carter G. Woodson said that basically he said and wrote that if a race has no history, it has no worthwhile tradition. It becomes let me start over. He said, if a race has no history, it has no worthwhile tradition. It becomes negligible, a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. And this is his opinion. He said the American Indian left no continuous record, so he didn't appreciate the value of tradition. And where is he today? Obviously, that's a true statement, because you really don't learn much about American Indian history, Native American history at all. You learn very little about them as well. So he said the American Indian left no continuous record. He did not appreciate the value of tradition. And where is he today? And then he said the Hebrew keenly appreciated the value of tradition, as is attested by the Bible itself. In spite of worldwide persecution, therefore, he is a great factor in our civilization. So, that was a major thing in Hebrew tradition, was to orally and written, they would orally tell their stories about their history. And if they had some, what were known as scribes, they would have them to write down the stories as well, to preserve them as best they could. And so that's why the Bible has so many different versions of certain stories, because they were heavy into trying to keep their tradition alive. And so some people may make a few mistakes here and there, and so that's why there's so many different versions. But I think that I agree with that because, we need to keep African American history alive until it is a major part of American history. And what's sad is it's really not, even to this day. So, I think that a lot of people who argue that you can't really delegate Black history to 1 month, and that it's the shortest month at that, they feel bad about that. It may be, I don't know, but I don't really look at it that way. I think the importance of it is how you look at it, because I think that we need to really push this history into history until it is engraved permanently in history where it doesn't have to be a separate month. You know what I mean? And, I really try not to complain about it because, it seems like, in my opinion, we are the only ones who complain about stuff like that. You got Hispanic heritage, they have that as a month. And you really don't hear Hispanic people complaining about that. They're just happy that, they've been included and they try to make the best of it. Now, of course, I don't want this to remain. I agree with Carter G. Woodson. I think that at some point, we shouldn't have to have a Black History Month or a Spanish Heritage Month, you know what I mean, or anything like that, because it should all be part of American history. We are American history, whether you like it or not. Carter G. Woodson is American history. Frederick Douglass is American history. You know what I mean? It's not just African history or Black history. It's American history because this country was built off of our backs. Period. That's straight to the point. And so, don't allow things like that, as far as African American history or Black History Month to deter you into complaining about it because it's just a month and it's just the shortest month. It's there to remind you that since we are not included heavily in American history, that we need to remind ourselves of it. You know what I'm saying? So, I kind of look at it like praying. If you believe in God, I look at it like praying. You know what I mean? You have to do it quite often to remind yourself of the importance of serving God and not forgetting about his presence. Just because we don't see him, we have to remind ourselves that he is behind everything. You know what I mean? So we're not perfect. So we need to be reminded. And I think it's a good way to remind us. So, but my hope is that one day it will become American history as a whole and not just this history over here and this history over here. Get that shit out of here. You know what I mean? We're not about to keep this separate. So, matter of fact, we might start doing a segment on African history every month on this channel. I'm going to go ahead and just put that out there because I'm sick of that shit. I don't want to wait till February to talk about it. But that's my little bit of a rant. Study on, the history of things like that. It started out as a week and it graduated to a month. That was just in the 70s. 1970, I believe, is when it became Black History Month. So that was during the decade that I was born in, because I was just born in 74. So it ain't that long since, it was declared as a month instead of just a week. So that's progress, and we're going to keep making progress until it becomes American history, period, where there's no longer a need to do that. So until they start changing them books, we're going to keep throwing that Black history up at y'all. So thank you for checking us out. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to rant and give you some information that you may or may not have known. So for Try It Hip Hop Podcast, for the Lost in Thought, this is your man Curtis, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.